G.I. Joe in and of itself is a massive subject, and even though I was a huge fan of the cartoon and had a whole crap ton of the toys growing up, I don't consider myself anywhere near qualified to speak to the history of it. In fact, I don't even think I really know enough about an individual character to really go deep on one. As much of a giant as G.I. Joe was, for me growing up, I do think that even kid me, as I watched the 80s roll into the 90s, kind of thought, what the hell is going on with G.I. Joe? This is just going crazy. So I thought it would be interesting to look at one character who has a lot of iterations. In this case would be Duke, who according to YoJoe.com has 51 versions now. I thought it would be interesting to look at one character through the original all the way to the very end of the 90s. Let's take a look at Duke. This is version 1 Duke from 1983. Pretty standard looking guy. I think just about everybody I knew had a Duke. 1983 saw the release of what I think of as kind of the core G.I. Joe experience, where it was less about everybody wearing green fatigues and everybody kind of representing different disciplines, the stuff that made G.I. Joe awesome. He's a pretty standard guy. Came with a helmet, binoculars, backpack with an entrenchment tool, a machine gun. What else could you ask for, really? Of course, the winning smile doesn't help. It doesn't hurt either. But he looks cool. He looks like a comic book version of the military, like G.I. Joe should. And Hasbro seemed happy enough for Duke for 5 years, because it wasn't until 1988 when they released Tiger Force that Duke got a dye job on his hair, some stripy pants, a new shirt, and basically different colors of everything he used to wear. Yeah, which was the whole thing, that was the whole theme of Tiger Force. It was what you saw before, just with awesome new tiger stripe paint jobs. Kind of ridiculous, starting to get a little out there, but they weren't really messing with success. So in 1992, Duke got his first major overhaul. He went back to his original blonde hair, lost his toothy grin. He got kind of a modernized helmet here. And the whole desert camo look kind of going on. I wonder if it was in a response to Desert Storm in the 90s. He comes with a much larger assault rifle, and I don't know what has happened to this one that I picked up, but maybe it was left in the sun or something, because it is literally cracking to pieces. You can just hear it wanting to crack. You can see it on the knife too. But since it was the 90s, he had to come with a missile launcher, right? This one's a little strange. It can go on his back, on this back peg, but it also has this large seat on it, so you can put it on a tripod and have him sit on it. This is kind of a little bit of Dr. Strangelove to me, but it has a tripod that comes with it. But this thing literally crumbled to dust when I tried to mount it. So this eBay seller left this bit of information out, and is a piece of garbage in my opinion. Duke got another version immediately following that in 1993. This is Battle Core Duke. His helmet is now permanently molded to his head, so you can't take it off, and show you his crew cut, and he's definitely more in the kind of desert infantryman look here. Here are his accessories, still on the sprue. Got a silenced kind of MP5 type thing, a machete, a shotgun, and gigantic laser gun thing here. Comes with a stand, which is cool, and and 2 missiles for his solid gold missile launcher here. So a little all over the place, but you can see the weapons are starting to get more fantasy skewed a little bit. I did kind of mess up because I had him in the card, but I screwed up and forgot to hit play when I opened it, so well, you can see on his card back things are starting to get a little strange because they're moving into outer space. But here he is all geared up with his stuff. No backpack, which is kind of lame. If you pick and choose, you can still get some decent weapons. He looks a little less G.I. Joe-like to me for some reason. I don't know if it's his face sculpt or what, but he just looks, I don't know, almost too generic? I don't know. Maybe I'm just being picky. He also came with this little pamphlet called Menace in the Wilderness. Looks to be this is mail-away things like here's the whale for $29.95 plus flag points. I don't think you're going to get it for that cheap anymore. Yeah, here's the mail-away form. G.I. Joe love their mail-away stuff. Uh-oh, now it's 1995 and the shit has really hit the fan. This Armortech Star Brigade stuff. Where the hell did this come from? This is so out of left field. for G.I. Joe. Robo Armored Warrior, Robo Arm Shoots. It's always sad when like a big toy line like G.I. Joe has to compete with other things, and they just kind of lost their focus, I think. And you know, this is really a turning point. I mean, look at this card art. Duke's just screaming in rage with spikes all over him in outer space. Look at this figure. It's like they took some other crap toy line and slapped Duke's head on it. At least he's smiling again. But this Star Brigade stuff is just a joke. Robo Joe? What is that, like Robocop? I don't know. Maybe it's a G.I. Joe that actually didn't fall out of his ship when it blew up. And I mean, he looks like Deathlock. Rock and Roll's got his head stuck in like a humidifier. Heavy Duty here has got like a gladiator helmet. I mean, some of the good guys look more evil than Destro in this case. And look at this thing, the Star Brigade Armor Bot. That does not look like G.I. Joe at all. And these are just repaints. Like this was a Strato Viper or something like that. And the Cobra Pogo, I can't even remember. See, at least you got this X-16 here that actually looks like a real thing, but then there's this Cobra detonator that fires a big Nerf dart. Oh god, I don't even, I mean, look at this thing. He's got a Gatling gun for an arm that's also a missile launcher, of course. He's got this two-tone thing for whatever reason. Spikes all over him like he's in a freaking space gladiator, and like, these dudes are cheap. It's like, how is this G.I. Joe at all in any way? He's actually got less articulation than a standard G.I. Joe because his legs only go back and forth, so he has to kind of robo-walk now that he's got his robo-armor. We've got to complete his look here with his stupid helmet, which doesn't even go all the way over his head. Yeah, that's not something you want to gap in a vacuum. There he is, grinning away as his legacy is destroyed. He comes with a bunch of junk on a sprue. Yeah, it's all pretty boring stuff. I don't know why he's got like a combat knife. Also, look how cheap this stuff is now. Like, G.I. Joe weapons used to be pretty rigid plastic, but now it's just like rubber. Yeah, watch out, Cobra. He's got a knife. He also came with this trading card. I don't know what the hell is going on right here. It looks like this is supposed to be Gung Ho versus a Bio Viper. To me, it looks like Gung Ho versus a Gorn. And how is that Gung Ho? Attention recruits, G.I. Joe wants to hang out with you. See, it's a poster offer. It's a pun. Oh my god. Full color 18 by 24, shown here in glorious monotone. It looks like, is this actual people they got to dress up? Maybe that's what is going on in these cards. They hired a bunch of actors. Looks like this cinematic intro for Resident Evil. I guess they really didn't want to give up on this Star Brigade stuff, because in 1994 we have version 6 Duke. He's still screaming and shooting guns in space very intensely. It looks like he's actually just being eaten by his suit. I don't know, it looks like he's in a blender or something, just screaming in pain. Back blaster shoots. So he's not as bad as that Exo Squad thing. In fact, he looks a little bit more like a G.I. Joe. There's a lot of matte paint on him, which is kind of weird. Yeah, they didn't really do many improvements. I mean, look at Sci-Fi. What the hell? Why do they all have these like super long helmets? Yeah, I'm sure this is probably old news to a lot of Joe collectors, but like my kind of G.I. Joe knowledge stopped much earlier than this. They're still hawking this horrible thing. Filed cards are much tinier and much pinker. So now we've come to 1997, which is the very last Duke that we're going to look at, and the last Duke of the 90s, since there wasn't another until 2000. After taking Duke to space and completely making him a joke, they went back to the original mold, except they screwed it up royally. He's made out of completely garbage plastic. You can see how soft the molding is on his face now with this ridiculous paint job where he's looking at his own eyebrows. He's got brown hair again, so he looks a lot more like Tiger Force, but the paint apps and the molding and the plastic quality are all just severely diminished. He's got a different backpack now. the same rifle, same old binoculars, and a much cheaper and thinner plastic helmet with a visor that they slapped on it. But now he's got a wristwatch though. That's an upgrade, I guess. Yeah, I'm just shocked at the poor quality of this thing. I don't know if the camera can really pick it up about how soft and brittle it is, but it doesn't have that kind of heft and solidness that the 80s and early 90s Joes had. So 1983 to 1997, almost 2 decades of Duke. He went through, kind of a rough road to just kind of boomerang back to a much inferior version of the first. It's kind of an interesting thing to see the evolution laid out like this. Ouch. Just these guys. Terrible. Well, thanks very much for watching. I think next up we're going to look at some Voltron stuff, of all things, speaking of the early 80s. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.